Welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. U. In studio with us today, I'm excited about this professional friend, mental health coach, and conflict strategist. Davina Hehn is in the house. How are you?
I am well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so glad about this. Our pre-interview chat was so awesome. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. Hopefully, we have enough time to let them hear all the things that I heard because your life is super interesting. So I'm excited about getting into this stuff. But as customary, whenever I have a guest on, I always ask them this first question, and we kind of off to the races from there. Tell me about your childhood and your upbringing. Tell me what that was like. What was young Davina like? What was that about?
Gosh. She was complicated. She was
Okay.
the youngest of 4 kids in 5 years, right? So there was a lot. I was raised by immigrants, and so we were a really big, loving family. There was no shortness of love within our household. There was just a shortness of time and attention because there was a lot going on. So myself as a young kid, I was more outgoing and playful and all of that. And then just very slowly, she kind of built up her shell. So that was that. But always loved and supported. Yeah.
I gotta get into it. I gotta ask you. This is what we do on this show. You can't drop nuggets like that, and I can't get into it. I got to. I'm sorry. I got 2 questions I want to ask you from what you said. One, I don't really talk about a lot of politics, but I love to hear your thoughts on the whole immigration thing that's going on around us because you have probably experienced some of it. I love your perspective. And then the second thing about why young Davina put a shell up, I want to know why that happened. So 2-part question, and take your time with both. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first one is loaded question. I
Do the best you can.
that's built on immigration. It's built on being a melting pot, right? And so I'm always going to be supportive of people coming in and joining and being part of this beautiful thing that we've been able to build. I of course think that there needs to be limitation on who is allowed in based on whether they are going to contribute or take away from the health, prosperity, safety
Good
of,
stuff.
our people here. So that's where I'm going to stop there.
I love your answer though. That's great. That's perfect. I love it. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I think it's healthy skepticism. It's healthy paranoia, basically. It's why we lock our doors, right? Like these things exist. And then my shell, I think it just came up from I wasn't coached and guided enough in my upbringing and like what to do with myself, with my feelings, with not knowing that like everyone else's first time living too is happening right now. And I
Okay.
internalize these things instead of just recognizing it. And so my parents divorced when I was 5. I stopped living with my father. Well, I mean, they actually got along better divorced. They stayed really good friends. We still took family vacations. There was still a lot of that closeness, which was really incredible and typically the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really impressed with the way that my parents navigated it. They did a really beautiful job of that. It was just my father was a small business owner and my eldest brother had drug addiction issues from the time I was young. So there was just a lot of this flying under the radar, making sure that I wasn't causing more, hardship for my mom. She went back to school to be an RN in her 40s. Like there was just a lot going on. And I think I just picked up on that. And so instead of me figuring out my own identity and knowing what to do with that and like how to process really big feelings, your girl just like,
you probably just empathetic, man, to what was going on around you. I mean, I was the same. So no, I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's so much interesting stuff about your life. I hope we have time to get into it because it's so good. And for all those that are watching and listening right now, if you have a question for Davina or myself regarding the topics that we talk about today, please drop them in the live chat. We'll have Davina answer those forthwith, and we'll keep the conversation going. So many things here. So much meat on this bone. I love it. But one thing I want to ask you about, because it feels like we need to have, I mean this without any offense. I think you know my heart by now from our conversations. I don't mean any offense here, but it feels like we need more relationship coaches and conflict strategies. And I think we should actually need. Why do we need so much of this now? Why can't we? Where do we go wrong in this? I guess I'm asking because my actual question is, when do you personally realize handling your emotions was a problem? When do you realize that, when was the light went on, like, oh my God, I'm not handling my emotions very well. This is an issue. So kind of talk to me about that, and then why you think we may need to have that more, and is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? So another 2-part question. Sid,
Yeah.
you on the
When did I realize it? Yesterday. Like, it's just it's so hard. And what I think this fundamentally comes down to is just emotional illiteracy. We aren't taught these things in our upbringing. I was taught about like igneous rock formations and not about like, hey, here's what it feels like when you get angry, and here's what you can maybe do about it.
Look at the scientists coming out. Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's like
igneous rock. I haven't heard that since I was in, what grade was that? That was a long time ago. Put it like that.
Right. But you're familiar with that. But a lot of the time we're not familiar with the fact that anger is a protective emotion, that it's a secondary emotion. It's not even a primary part of our emotion system. And so that's where I think it is what we end up learning about is the literacy and these types of things in our education system. But within our homes and also within that system, we're not taught conflict tolerance, not even resolution. Like, don't even figure out how to deal with it afterward, how to make it better.
Sure.
How do we tolerate just sitting in it and navigating through it? And now we have a bunch of, kids walking around in adult bodies who weren't taught emotional regulation. And so now we're throwing books at people who were never taught how to read or even how to sound out the vowels and expecting them to know how to. And that's where I think a lot of this comes from. And the second part of your question is, I went all the way through my undergraduate program, my graduate program, being a deeply not self-aware person and thought that I was. And so, because I could talk about feelings a lot, but I intellectualized them. I didn't actually feel them. I didn't know how to let myself feel them. And so it wasn't until my husband and we got married. We had this tumultuous, super toxic relationship. It was not great.
Oh,
wow. Well, because we were just so wounded. We got together in our early 20s. We were friends first. We were just so wounded. My dad had just died. Like, there was a lot going on. And then I went into grad school and I went into forensics and mainly sex offense. So that was even bigger experiences, bigger traumas, and just like
Davina Hehn, SCU. Special victims unit. Is that what we're doing? I didn't know about that part. Wow.
Yeah. It's what I wanted to do. I went to Boston and I got my master's in forensics and counseling psychology and worked in a medium security prison for adult male sex offenders. And there was just a lot of those things that, like, you hear these stories by proxy. Anyway, flash forward and we become parents and woof, like that challenge ways that I never knew how. I was not a very emotionally regulated person. My brother died unexpectedly when I was 7 months pregnant in my first pregnancy. I just had no idea how to navigate things, and I would just kind of shove them down until eventually everything comes to a crisis that I'm super grateful for. My husband and I are both very grateful. And it was around 4 years ago that we had this crisis that really brought to the forefront that we aren't doing this work, that I'm teaching people how to do this, but I'm not embodying it. And that's when we really kind of tore everything down. We didn't go back to a marriage. We didn't save our marriage. We built an entirely new one. And that's where everything built from. Yeah.
That's profound. I love that. Wow, that's deep. I don't know where to go. That's amazing. Seriously, it really is. We talked a lot about partnership versus parenting, and we kind of got into that a little bit. I wasn't going to go here yet. I was going to ask some other questions, but since we're already here, it's a natural segue. What's some of the ugly in parenting that you and your husband have experienced? What you see? Because I feel like I had interviews with several parenting coaches, parenting experts. I'm not putting you in that category. I think you're different, but parenting experts. And I don't know how they come off to people, because people have to have kids and have had kids and raised them into adulthood. They might have said, you know what, I got this. I did it. And, the kids are still alive. They're not dead. I did great. But I love to hear some of the ugly about parenting that you and your husband have experienced, because that real authentic stuff is what I think our listeners and viewers want to hear about. So if you don't mind sharing that, I asked you in advance, you said yes, so you can't change your mind now. It's already
Oh,
grandfathered in. So please, by all means, go ahead and share some of the ugly parenting that I guess you can all relate to probably, but go ahead.
yeah, I think, gosh, it is a trap. It is a bait and switch. It is not, they don't talk about it.
That's,
I
that's
think
funny.
fundamentally the poor expectations are what causes so much of our suffering, right? Like I got the whole notion of like, oh, well, you're a woman, you're supposed to want this, and once you have that baby, you're gonna look at them, and they're just gonna be this beautiful thing, and your soul is gonna grow, and you're gonna feel like so rooted in who you are. And instead,
Mhm.
I was like, I just take this thing home. Like I'm just responsible for this thing. Like I don't even know how to do this. And it was, I expected the lack of sleep and the mess and, all of this kind of stuff, but I did not expect feeling like visceral amounts of rage in my chest that I'd never known I was capable of. The lack
Wow.
of emotional regulation, the conflict between myself and my husband, how quickly I would lose my temper. And I just wasn't prepared for the soul hit that this brought up in me. We talked about having a baby. We did not talk about having a first grader and a 10th grader and a whole adult that we would have to raise. And I think that it can be very like a, well, yeah, duh, of course you're going to raise a whole human. It
Sure.
just didn't
Sure.
really, it didn't really land for me. And so we went through a lot of that, of our own inadequacies as people, realizing that we didn't really know who we were. My husband and I had never been tried and tested in these ways, and so our marriage nearly ended.
Mm.
We didn't know how to navigate this whole new process and be so responsible over these little humans' lives and their souls
Oh my
when
goodness.
we barely felt responsible over our own. And it was, man, yeah, it rocked us.
Yeah. That's there's so much we can go into that. I think one of the things you said I thought was just so interesting is that we never, you know, we don't think about, we don't have the end in mind when we start this journey. Our kids, but I've interviewed several folks who've had issues in their parenting where their children became somebody they didn't recognize, and some even said somebody they didn't even like. They
Mm-hmm.
became a totally different person. They didn't enjoy being around in their own household. I thought it was just so deep. And I'm like, it brings me back to the question about how to handle our emotions. Why haven't we learned that? How would we have learned that? What are you guys doing to kind of to help people understand that we haven't learned it? And are you offering a solution for that? Is there a way to kind of help make this thing at least a little bit better? What can you share? I mean, because it's a real thing, like you said.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that, of course, there are those experiences where we raise children who are very far away from what we expected. My question to follow up would be, did you know who you are? Could you have
Wow,
navigated them through their identity in a way that
wow.
worked? Like, could you actually spell it out step by step and explain to them how to determine who they are? And if you can't, which is, of course, a very hard thing for all of us to do, then we don't get to say that like they became someone, they had to figure it out without your guidance. And so that's where I was not born to be a parent, and we can always go into that later, but I was not born to be a parent.
We're
And
going into that next.
yeah. Well, and here's where it's like I am one. And so I have not only the opportunity, but the responsibility to rise. And if I don't know how to regulate my own emotions, if I don't know how to differentiate between what is my issue, what is my child's issue, and what is our issue combined, each time I disagree with my child, it will be the child's fault. If I don't realize what I'm
Hmm.
projecting onto them, if I don't realize ways that I'm unintentionally harming them and that they don't know what to do with that discomfort, then yeah, that's what's going to happen. If I'm losing my temper and I'm not showing them how to repair afterward, if they're experiencing conflict and witnessing conflict and not being shown and literally guided into like, hey, here's how you take accountability. Here's how you take accountability and not be really mean to yourself afterward and think that you're a terrible human. Here's how you actually apologize and mend and repair and move forward in prevention. But a lot of us weren't taught these things, and we can't teach what we don't know. And that is where I come in. That's where the program that I'm launching is the Parental Shift. And it's not a parenting program. I'm not a child development expert. It is a program for parents, because most parenting programs are saying, okay, well, here's why your toddler is having a tantrum. Here's why your teenager is being sassy. And here's what you need to do for them to support them, which of course is important. And what is it within me that makes it intolerable to sit with my emotions when my kid is having a tantrum? What is it that sparks
Mm.
it that views my teenager needing time away as being disrespectful toward me? And it's these types of things that we have to learn about ourselves so we can know that the mirror we're holding to our children is not a funhouse one. That like
The therapist is speaking her, the therapist is speaking her head out. I can
think
I can see her.
it's a really hard thing, and nobody tells us about these things, and
Yeah.
we villainize the kids. And given like some of us are just, a little wrecked from the beginning, but for the most part, we are malleable and we are molded, and we oftentimes just don't know where to focus. And this is how things get out of hand. We lose control. Where I start is within your own identity and recognizing and learning about yourself and the way that you view your world. What's your attachment style like? Where did your wounding start? What are your patterns? And then we work to actually heal through those and modify them. But it has to start with us. We can't expect our 3-year-old to out adult me and be able to regulate themselves when they're
Oh,
upset.
gosh, we hope not. They have ice cream for dinner every night, so that's a horrible idea. Absolutely no, but this is really awesome. We laughed about it, but I'm positive that there's somebody who I maybe in my circle of influence that's going to not think this is funny, but
Mhm.
I do, about being born to be a parent. I think that's hilarious because even though I know it's a responsibility and an obligation in this whole procreation experience, we have to do it, but I know people who kind of feel like, I'm born to be a parent. And honestly, and I know that I've offended plenty of folks on my podcast. Not going to stop now, but I think it's kind of, how do I say this in the nicest way possible? I think it's a crock. I think it's a cop out. I honestly do. So if somebody's watching, listening, who thinks they're born to be a parent, I don't mean to offend you. It's not. I didn't wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to make her mad today. But I think it's crazy because I think it limits the real purpose you have walking around on this earth. Because when your kids are older and they no longer really need your parenting skills, if you will, then what's your job? You're basically on hiatus. So it's like eternally, because the older they get, they're going to be parenting and grandparenting them, so they're not going to need you to really do that as much. So I feel like that's just, it's not a thing. But you was talking about how you don't feel like you're born to be a parent. Get into that just a little bit, and then we'll move on forward. I'd love to hear more about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I have this anecdotal theory that we are either born to be parents or partners or neither. And while we can be both, we tend to view the world through one perspective or another. I was born to be a partner, right? My lens in life was never about, oh, I can't wait to be a mom when I grow up. It was, I want partnership. I want that collaborator. I want a forever friend. And whereas people like my sister, she, from the time I remember, she was like, I cannot wait to be a mom. Like this is my life's desire. She had the dolls. I was like, nah. She babysat.
All right.
Ugh, get them far away from me as possible. I was never drawn to children. I don't even like kids unless I know them personally. And otherwise I'm just like, you're sticky, you're snotty. I'm not into it. And there's that part that and again, I was born to be a partner, and I am a parent, and I am a very good parent because I work really hard to make sure that I am. I recognize my shortcomings. I recognize, what are they called? Growth edges. I recognize my
Never heard of that, but okay.
it's a cute spin. It's a on weaknesses. And I recognize those and I view these as opportunities to rise, to evolve. And for a lot of us, we kind of take on the role of parent and then we don't do anything different. So my whole thing is when we see what we end up seeing, or what I end up seeing working with a lot of couples and a lot of parents, is we tend to have one of each in these relationships where one person puts everything, their entire identity is built on being a parent, what their kids
That's
need.
scary to me.
I agree. And then the other one who says, well, not everything has to change. We welcome this child into our world. We aren't changing our entire world for this child. And that's usually where we end up with a lot of conflict and a lot of marriages that fail and a lot of people who don't have an identity once their kids leave the home. And that's where I think it becomes challenging because not only do we lose our own identity, our relationship loses its identity, and then our kids carry so much responsibility to be this epitome of all of my hopes and dreams that I sacrificed for you.
Oh no! So yeah, this is what we're talking.
For this. Like, what are you talking about? You brought me here. I didn't force my way in. And so it's a lot of that I think we set ourselves up for failure. And I think that it's a beautiful thing when people love being a parent. I love being a mom to my boys. If I couldn't be guaranteed that I could get these kids back, if I were to redo it again, I don't think I would do it. And so
I love that.
it's this kind of experience, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying it. I think a lot of people can't or are uncomfortable rather with the idea of accepting multiple truths, that I can absolutely adore my children, think that the world is a better place because they exist within it, and also despise this job. But like, love the work.
I'm with you. If you didn't catch that, bookmark the 21-minute mark of this episode because that's where it's at. But I'm going to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to change what I said, but I'm going to kind of just make sure that I reiterate some things there. I'm not saying that being a mom and dad is not a beautiful thing. I think it truly is. It's a complicated thing, but it's still a beautiful thing nonetheless. But to think that somebody was born, I mean, they were actually fashioned and made just to have children. I'm cringing on that part because I'm like, no, there's more in you. We limit who we are creatively and emotionally and everything just by saying, you know what, this is all I am. And when like you said, when the kids get out of the house and we experience it in our own household, when the kids let me like, okay, so who are you? You seem familiar, but I'm not quite sure who you are. Who are you again? And we have to try to reintegrate. So it's like it's a bad situation. So it's good to be able to make sure we're bringing the kids into a functioning relationship and partnership, and not we're only here because of them, and when they're gone, we have nothing. So that's deep. It gets to a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah, didn't mean to go too deep into that, but
no, not all. And I agree with that because I think it's within parenthood is the only realm that we are expected to take it on as an entire identity. No one's career, hobby, car they drive, right, where they live. We don't want that to be their entire identity. And for some reason, when it comes to parenting, we expect it to, because of course it is a really big responsibility and it carries a lot of weight and it's a part of your identity, but it doesn't have to be your entire identity. And I think it's that part of not knowing how to balance it that ends up, leading into very black and white thinking, very all or nothing kind of mentalities.
Absolutely. Now, I asked you a tough question during our pre-interview chat. I'm going to ask that now so we can start getting, hopefully, to some, essentially lighter stuff. There's not really lighter stuff in this. It's a lot of deep stuff you need to bring to the table. But as a conflict specialist, step outside of it for a second and say that you're going to yourself, right? And you're offering your services to you. What would you need to hear? What has to happen for you to receive your own help? Because people have these titles, coach and mentor. We talked about it, and I told you that I cringe at even hearing it most of the time because it's so watered down, and the market for this is so oversaturated. Tell me why. I mean, because you could have went the therapist route, like we talked about. You got the chops to do that. We can already hear it throughout the episode so far already. But what would it take for you to accept your advice, being a conflict specialist and mental health coach? What would be the thing that you need to hear or see to say, you know what, this is legit. I accept this, because I know somebody's watching and listening right now, and they're wondering, how can this person help me out? So kind of parse that together if you can.
Yeah, I think, well, one, I heard this joke in my undergrad, and it was basically, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Have you heard this?
Oh, come. Maybe, but tell me.
Just one, but the light bulb has to want to change is the, yeah, because it doesn't matter where you get the guidance from. If you're open to it and you want it, you will take it in, right? So the first part is my previous self would have had to want to do the work, and she was a bit stubborn, and she was a bit proud, and she a lot of it. She probably would have felt like needing the help, needing the support was weak or somehow indicative of her shortcomings. And so the admitting of that would have been and was very hard for her, especially in this line of work, right? Like I'm expected to know all and be this like Yoda. And for me, what really helps me is when I can have someone else explain my experience to me when we've never met. Right. And what I really try to do as a provider, as a practitioner, as this professional friend is to bring life and bring a voice to the things that we tend to think only inside of ourselves and refuse to admit out loud. So I want somebody who isn't a guru, who isn't an expert, who isn't saying it's this way or no way. I just need someone who says, hey, here's something that might help you. And if it doesn't, let's trial and error and keep going. So for me to find someone that I work with, I need them to show humanity. I need them to show flaw. And I need them to explain my experience to me in words that I haven't found yet. And if I can get that, then that's who I choose.
I love this. I hope people hear this, because I talk to a lot of folks, and and everybody that has a story thinks they should write a book. Everybody that has a story thinks they should start a website. I'm like, yeah, that's not where my mind is at. I think my story is valuable. I talk about it a lot on other shows, but honestly, it's not a prerequisite to start doing those things. I think it requires the authenticity you were talking about, and the realness, the transparency, if you will. So I love that. That's great. You talked about, or you described yourself as a professional friend. My question is, what is that, and is this a group I can join?
So yes, professional friend is really because the mental health world is so deeply stigmatized, right? Like I refused the work and I went to do this work, right? Like this is just what we do. We are walking hypocrites. We're really good at giving advice and very terrible at taking it. And so,
oh goodness,
no. And so I
get into it. I want to go for it. Yeah, dig in there.
Oh, it's I lost my train of thought. What was your first question? I got too excited.
About what's a professional friend, and it's just a group that I can join.
All day. Yes. So because of that stigma, because of that expectation that I'm supposed to know all, I'm supposed to be better at these things, I'm supposed to do all of this, it leads to more people deviating from the system, from doing the work than want. And it forces people to wait until they're at the very end of their rope, until they are just so desperate for the work that's when they come in. And I think it's given within pervasive mental health, diagnoses and illnesses, of course, that's helpful, but we're running on a very antiquated system. And so
you betcha.
And so and there's a time and a place for those diagnoses and all of this. And now we're entering into a world where everything is pathologized. Everyone has a disorder. Everyone has a diagnosis, when in reality, a lot of this is just life, and life is hard. And we weren't expecting it to be this hard because we're ill-equipped. And that's why I went into this, one, into the coaching space, and two, into this more of a professional friend thing, because that's just what I'm looking for. I just want somebody who is right alongside in the trenches with me, who has the expertise in this without being an expert in this, that can talk to me like a friend, that can converse with me like a friend, who will have human reactions instead of staying like this blank slate that I was trained to stay as. And that's really all I'm looking for. A lot of people say, like, I don't need a therapist. I have my best friend. And it's like, oh, your best friend is wounded and your best friend can't see it either. And so that's why we all need somebody. And I have a provider. Every provider should have their own provider. If your provider doesn't, run. And it's really just making sure that we are all checking and balancing ourselves. We need someone to hold a mirror to us, show us our blind spots, and challenge us in ways that we still feel safe within. And that's what the whole professional friend is. It's like, come on in, I'm doing this too. And I will tell you what I've tried, what's worked for me. I will tell you what I haven't tried because I'm resistant, and here's why. And also, here's what we can try together. Let's see what works. But it
That's
doesn't have to
beautiful.
be like, I'm in this position and I'm going to tell you what you need. You are the expert on your experience. And if you just want someone to bounce ideas off of that isn't biased, that is trained in human behavior, and, can navigate these things in a way that likely won't end up in regret, then I'm your person. And yes, you can join. I would love for you to join.
I would love to be a part of that kind of community, because that's where I'm at right now. I mean, I got papers and resumes and certificates and all kind of stuff all over this place, but I think that the value comes from my experience, what I've seen and did wrong, and that's how this podcast was born.
Well,
Where it came from.
gosh, I think that there's a lot of that we're supposed to show the good at the end, but not the work in between. And it's even like when you see any.
Yeah. Are you stuck on me? Oh, this is too good for you to go out here. Oh, some technical issues here, everybody. Sorry about that. All right, Davina, you are frozen like the movie. We can't hear you at all. So, oh, this is so good. For you guys that can still hear me, that listening and viewing, please stay tuned. We're not done yet. We're almost done, but we're not there yet. Some more interesting questions going to be asked today, and let's see if we can get through this technical issue. This is a dramatic pause if I ever saw one. She's gone. Oh my goodness. All right, but just to recap why Davina gets back online, we're excited about having her here. If you guys haven't checked it out, please check the episode out. Of course, leading up to this point, that 21-minute mark, that's the gold nugget point of this episode so far, because honestly, that's where I think she said some of the most profound stuff that I think she's ever said throughout the course of this discussion so far. At the 21-minute mark, that's gold right there. But she's talking about, what it means to be a professional friend and the work that has to be done without the antiquated view of therapy. So she's bringing some things to the table that are outside of the box. She's really good at what she does. She's really smart. You can kind of get that from hearing things so far. Definitely have a small handful of questions left that we're going to ask her when she jumps back online. So we're kind of just waiting for that. We're going to keep the show going, even though it's supposed to be a one-on-one interview, and the other person that I'm interviewing is not here. So we're going to have fun with that. This is the technical world, and we live in it, and we enjoy it, and we expect these kind of things to happen. So it's all good. It's all good. One of the things to definitely check out in our show notes, her program, which I think is going to be promoted starting on June the 5th. The program for parents is not a class on how to be a parent. Keep that. That's very important. A distinction was something that she said she really wants you guys to understand. So it's a program to help parents deal with some things from an emotional stability and emotional literacy standpoint. So how to navigate conflict in your home and in your marriage. So she's going to go into all of those things through her program. She also has a free quiz that she's going to offer to you guys. It's also, the links to that's also in the show notes. So we'll definitely be hopefully talking about that when she jumps back online. But we're pretty excited about continuing the conversation. So we're kind of just hanging out and waiting for Davina to come back online with us. Hopefully that's going to be shortly. But we're excited about that. I was sitting here thinking when I first met, I was like, what is a conflict specialist? I have so much conflict in my life. I'm like, how do I do I need a specialist to deal with this? But her insights are so good because she's so spot on about what she was saying. So all right, so that's okay. I was talking for you. You have to go back and hear what I was saying about you. You need to go back and hear that for the time that you were out, because I think it's important that you hear what I was saying about you and what you were talking about. But okay, do you think you can finish your point, or you want to move forward?
You can help me find the branch I was on.
Oh my God! Well, we're talking about the professional friend and the network that you were talking about inviting me into. But after that, you were saying something. I'm like, I don't totally recall where you were, but I think you were just talking about how we just been ill-equipped to deal with some stuff, and we need support in the community. Does that help at all? If not, we can move forward. I'm ready, so it doesn't matter.
I mean, I learned in grad school if it's important, it'll come back. So we can always keep moving.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's what we need. And I used to be so introverted, and well, I still am. And it was more so I would never join a group program. I didn't really need community. I had my close-knit group of friends. And I was like, that's enough for me. I'm recognizing now more than ever that we need the supports, because this is what we were talking about. See, it was important. It came back on socials. This kind of thing we see, hey, we're having a baby. Here's a hospital gown. Oh my gosh, and look at this cute little baby. And baby's here. And oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. And oh my God, we're so in love. And la da da. And then we don't talk about the horror show that is childbirth. We don't talk about the horror show that is parenting in general, how many fights you get into. You're showing everyone like Mother's Day, look how cute, I'm so grateful. Not the fight that you and your husband got into right before you took that photo, and how your expectations were just destroyed based on how they planned the day, and just really just all of these things. And so what I want to do is kind of just pull the curtain back and allow for it for all of us to say, hey, this is wonderful. This is beautiful. This is amazing. I am grateful. And I am so honored to have this position within my life. And also, here are the parts that are really hard. And here's what we can do together to navigate it. I used to think that I was the problem. I didn't feel connected to my kids for weeks, if not months, after they were born. And it took me a really long time to feel like I was a mom, and the guilt and shame that I carried was just within me. And I didn't think anyone else felt that way. I despised the responsibilities of parenting, and I thought no one else felt that way because no one else talked about it. Or they would, but only at the very end of their rope. So what I'm building is a program for parents, for people who just happen to be parents, because it's not our identity, right? It's people who happen to be parents whose experience overwhelmed their ability to cope with it. And that's okay, because this is a horror show. And here's where we all come together to learn new skills, emotionally regulate, talk about conflict, work through these things in advance, be able to guide our children into being emotionally intelligent adults who won't suffer as much as they need to in the world, and hopefully don't have a childhood that they're going to have to recover from later on in life. And that's really what I'm trying to build, is community, a tribe for people to go to.
I love it. That's excellent. I hope that grows to your vision and beyond. I love that. Just a small handful of questions left. I knew we wouldn't have time to ask all the questions I had. I knew it, but it's okay. It's okay. But 2020 was something that you and I kind of connected on in our pre-interview chat. Probably the worst year in our country to date. If not, it's in the top 5. If it's not the number 1. It was also the year of enlightenment. I know several entrepreneurs, myself included, started stuff like podcasts and new businesses and small businesses and just doing our own thing. What was the big change for you during that year? What was the pivotal point for you in 2020?
Yes. When everything happened, I was a few months postpartum. I had one day back to work, working for a surgeon I used to work for before all the lockdowns happened. So I actually launched my practice, a study space, in June of 2020. So it was all of that I think it propelled a lot of us forward. And I'm also a firm believer that out of everything bad has to come some good. And so around there is when I realized that I have no idea what I'm doing. This is hard. I attempted to stop drinking around that time and learned that it was much more difficult for me than I ever expected it to be. And so there was a lot of, this enlightenment. There was a lot of recognition that while it was nice to kind of like be, home with my husband and my kids, I really did enjoy the break from the world. The rest of it came in a deep level of identity crisis and having to figure it out really
Wow.
quickly about what I want to do and who I want to be next. And that's where everything started within my practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I'm not going to spend too much time going back 5 years ago, but it's I don't think we really, even to this date, 5 years later, I don't think we really got what was actually happening. Forget all the stuff that was political in nature and the media coverage and all the push that was sent our way and the isolation. I feel like we missed, and this is just kind of, I consider myself a deep thinker. If you don't, well, I'm sorry. I'm deluding myself because that's where I think my head's at. But I just kind of just feel like we missed something in all this stuff because we learned something. What happens when you get shut down from doing your job? Look at all the identity crises that we saw when people couldn't go and do their job.
Yeah.
Where they thought everything, all their eggs was in that basket. This job is my life, my ability, all my talent is thrown into this basket right here. So if I get fired, I have nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like it just exposed what was really wrong with our system of thinking. And it's like all these folks. I mean, we had probably 80% of Americans started businesses that year. You know what I'm saying? That's a huge number. What does that tell you? That's, in fact, I think it was 83%. That's a huge number. What did that tell you? It tells you that our identity was in the wrong place. It was like we were thinking about the wrong stuff, and we had to be almost forced, if you will. I mean that kind of lightly.
Yeah.
Forced to reevaluate and think about things differently. But when you sparked the Shift Talking podcast and a sea of so much podcast content, talk to me about why you decided to do that when the market was already oversaturated as it was. Why'd you start that podcast?
Yeah, I was late to the show. I just started it in September. And so it really came as a result of my clients in sessions asking that like they wanted their friends and family to work with me, but they were resistant. And so they had been asking if they could start recording our sessions, if they could play them for their friends and family.
Oh,
And so it kind of very naturally came about. The other part that I recognize is that I was, my rates are where they have to be in order for me to sustain my business, right? And so it's a luxury, and this kind of work should not be a luxury, it's a necessity. And so I wanted to be able to put out this information that people would get with me one-to-one that I was really just repeating on, oh my goodness, constantly on a platform that would be free to access and be able to actually do this work on their own if they were ready to do it. And I don't want this to be something that's viewed as so much of a luxury and viewed as only for people who can afford the out-of-pocket cost. I want this information needs to be everywhere. And I really just decided to put it on a platform. I never plan to have ads. I never plan to monetize it. I just want it to be information for people who don't know where else to go and get sound quality information that is research backed, that is trauma informed, and allow for them to get guidance and tools to start doing this work incrementally on their own without needing, a massive income.
wow. That's amazing. No, that's a great answer to it. Why I started a podcast. I don't always hear that. I hear other things that don't seem so meaningful, but we all have this in our world of podcasting and content creations. So I want to ask you this question: what's the moment where you thought maybe I shouldn't be doing podcasting? Because we all have it. As a matter of fact, some of us had it yesterday. But what's the moment where you say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be doing this? What was that moment? When was that, and what were you thinking?
Yeah, it happens constantly. This is really hard. And there's a lot of that here that in order for me to do the work that I really believe in, and in order for me to have the reach and expose certain parts of my life in a way that hopefully encourages others to do the same, I have to open up a lot of my own world. And what that does
Oh
is
yeah.
drag who happen to be in my world into this exposure. And so that is something that I'm constantly battling, because I would, if it was just me and I was the only one affected, I would be much more transparent, because I don't care. I want people to know whatever that it is that they need to know that I'm human, to know that my experiences are not unique, that a lot of us are experiencing these same things, just in different patterns, in different, colors. And I just want it to look realistic. But there is this part that I'm constantly asking myself, like, well, if I tell this story, if I explain it in this way, if I share this raw information, it's pulling people in from my day to day, and they didn't choose to be outed in this way. They didn't choose to be spoken about publicly. They didn't choose that. And so these are the kind of things that I grapple with when doing this work. And so thankfully my husband and I are my husband's very open. He's actually about to join me on the podcast and talk all about our marriage.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be gnarly. So there's that, and he's a champion for me, and he's incredible, and so I'm very fortunate in that. So it's, to answer your question, it's constant, making sure that what I'm putting out is actually worth it. Every so often, I'm just like, who am I talking to? Like, nobody cares. What little old me? Like, who am I to talk about these things? But for the most part, it
I'll
becomes,
do that every day.
the identity crisis, even within this, is massive.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. I probably got like about 3 or 4 videos on that on my YouTube channel alone. It's just it's a real thing.
I'm gonna have to check.
I wish we had more time. This is amazing. You got so much amazing stuff going on. I know you talked about your program. I think maybe June 5th is when you're going to promote the program for parents. I think you said, is that right? June 5th.
Yep. So that's when we have our first group meet. And so we are now, it's a beta program so it's the beta for the first 30 days. And so after that, it'll go to $429 a month. We're doing $218 for the first month for that beta program. And so we get a one-to-one, we get a personality assessment, anger assessment, and then these weekly group sessions where we get to talk and learn and chat and feel like we have somewhere to go.
I love it. And I always, it's customary. I know we talk about links and places and websites and stuff on the show whenever I'm hosting somebody like yourself. But I'd love for you to jump onto our YouTube channel where the episode is in the comments section. If you wouldn't mind, if it's not too inconvenient, drop all those links so people can find it. I'm not saying they're too lazy to go back and rewind this. I'm not saying that, but I'd love for you to drop the links there for the website, the free quiz you talked about where people can kind of get some help with some things. I'd love for you to drop all that stuff in that section there, because I thought it was in the show notes, but just to be able to cover us, if you don't mind dropping it in the comment section under the YouTube episode on the channel, that'll help out a lot so they can find it, I guess, easily. But one final question for you today. I prepped you on a little bit. I asked every one of our guests that, and it's always something to have to think about, but I gave you some time to think about it, which is rare. I don't always do that. But if you weren't doing coaching and what I think is a sort of therapy in the mental health space, what would Davina be doing instead? What do you think her life would be looking like if she wasn't doing what she's doing now? No coaching, no therapy, no podcasting, none of those things. What would you be doing?
So I have a professional and a personal answer. Professionally, I would have done what I originally wanted to do before I got pregnant, which was working.
Ooh, watch it now. Be careful.
Some sort of government entity, right? Like I was
Really?
applying. I was in that process to join the FBI as a field agent, and so like that was something that I would have really loved to do, and just travel the world with my husband and just like get, just keep doing the forensic work. I would have really loved that. So I think that's where she probably.
Oh my goodness.
My sister tells me that I
Wow.
missed an opportunity in PR because she's like, you can put a spin on anything. So that maybe PR would have been another one. And if it were just me about soul enriching, that wasn't about, needing money to survive and all of that, I would have gone into like a lounge singer, kind of like that kind of vibe. I would have loved to do.
What? I thought that I knew some things. I don't think I know anything about you. A lounge singer.
Yeah, just the idea of like being in somewhere dark and playful and where people can go to kind of escape from their day-to-day lives and be able to kind of be someone who helps them do that through music, I think is a really beautiful thing. And that was where my childhood was like in choir, and I loved singing as a kid. And then I, of course, went into my shell and I stopped. And so that's something that I would have wanted to play through. No, she's no Adele. Let's be real. And it would have been something that I would have fully enjoyed.
You're amazing. So glad to have you on here. I mean, like I said, I had probably about 10 questions on the table I didn't even have time for, but this is amazing. Hope it's not the last time that we talk. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing, and your insights has been fantastic. Hopefully everybody resonates with this. I'll be definitely sharing and promoting this episode as much as possible, but I'll give you the floor for the next 3 minutes. Talk about what you want to talk about. The listeners and viewers are locked in. Those that are live with us and those that are going to watch it on the replay. If you have one big takeaway you want to share that you think needs to be said before you go off air, here's your shot, Davina. Go for it. Take it. Get after it.
No pressure. No, more than anything, it's just to embrace the human experience. I think that the more that we resist the inconveniences, the more we resist the way that like it quote unquote shouldn't be this way, the more suffering we experience. Anger is a part of it. Anger is a really beautiful, like protective emotion. It's just our armor. And I think if we learned how to navigate it in more ways and viewed it as a compass and as an indicator of where we are feeling wronged, where we feel injustice, where we feel powerless and voiceless, and use that for a better way of presenting it, I think we would all experience a better time while we're here. A lot of this is going to be rooted in how we view ourselves and how, in my opinion, wrongly we view the human experience. And so my whole thing is like, embrace the anger. We'll ditch the aggression. Like, let's get rid of that. But more so than anything, listen to yourself. Trust your intuition. If there's a part of you that says, I want better, like nothing is necessarily wrong, but I want something to feel right. That's where we lean into this intuition. You figure out exactly one step that you could possibly take that would bring you any sort of joy more than you have now, and you just take that very, very, very small step.
I love it.
Guidance and who to work with, if you're looking for guidance and where to even start, because mental health is very confusing and nobody teaches you these things, then you can come to me. I give free consultations constantly, and it's not just to work with me. I'm not a salesperson. That is not my job. That would be super predatory and why I don't like the coaching space. So more than anything, it's just go to anyone you trust, and whether that's me or someone else, and get guidance, and then just take one single step moving forward into it, and just trust yourself.
I love that. That's you have my heart with that one. That's where I am with what we're doing here as well. But encourage all you guys that are watching and listening, check out the free quiz that Davina offers. It's going to be linked in on our YouTube channel, youtube.com @ They Call Me Mr. U. On this episode, you'll have the links there for all of her work and websites where you can find her work. But thank you again. This has been fantastic. Well, Davina and Mr. U are out. Hang on offline for a little bit. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. But besides that, we're out of here. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please drop your comments and questions on the YouTube channel episode link. And look forward to hearing your thoughts on this incredible episode. Thanks, Davina. Have a great day, guys.